The feeling you have when you look in the mirror and find yourself lacking, that feeling did not happen to you. It was built for you, deliberately, expensively, and with extraordinary precision. And the people who built it are not in the therapy business. They are in the profit business. That is not a metaphor. That is not an activist talking point designed to make you feel better. It is a business model, one of the most successful in human history. And this video is going to walk you through exactly how it works. Because here is what most conversations about beauty standards miss. Telling you the standards are unrealistic doesn't help. You already know that. You have known that for years. And knowing it has not made the feeling go away, which is not a failure of your willpower or your self-awareness. It is evidence that the mechanism runs deeper than awareness can reach. So this video is not going to tell you to love yourself. It is going to show you the architecture of the thing that has been making that so difficult. Because a mechanism with a name and an author can be questioned in a way that a character flaw never can. Now, to better understand where this feeling comes from, consider something worth sitting with: body dissatisfaction. The specific feeling of looking at yourself and finding something fundamentally wrong is not a timeless feature of human experience. It expanded, measurably historically, in direct correlation with advertising. Research on this is consistent. Women exposed to idealized images in beauty advertisements show increased self-dissatisfaction afterward. Not occasionally, not in extreme cases, but as a documented, reproducible outcome. The more exposure, the deeper the effect, and the effect does not stay on the surface of conscious thought. Studies measuring implicit self-evaluation, the level below what you would say out loud about yourself, show that even brief exposure to beauty advertising changes how people perceive their own worth, even when they consciously believe it hasn't affected them. So the version of you that walks into a bathroom and finds something to criticize before you've fully woken up, that version was not born with that reflex. It was trained into you. With repetition, with precision, and with a very specific commercial purpose. Because the industry did not find your insecurities, it created them. And the distinction matters more than almost anything else you are going to hear today. There is a term used in marketing research to describe what happens when a brand defines a problem and then sells you the solution: problem creation. Not problem identification. Problem creation. The problem did not exist, or did not exist at this scale, until someone needed it to exist in order to sell something. Body hair on women. Pores. The concept of anti-aging as something to fight rather than a natural process to inhabit. Each of these was an invented inadequacy, launched in an ad campaign, normalized over decades of repetition, and eventually internalized so completely that it feels like it came from inside you. It did not come from inside you. You were not born with it. That is not reassurance. That is history. Let's take a closer look at how this system was built and who it serves. The global beauty and personal care market is currently valued at over $620 billion. That number does not sustain itself on products people need. It sustains itself on a feeling, a very specific feeling, that there is something about your natural self that requires correction. And maintaining that feeling is not accidental. It is engineered. Here is how the architecture works. The first step is to define the flaw. Not a flaw that already exists and causes suffering. A flaw that needs to be noticed before it can be suffered over. The industry's strategy, across decades and product categories, has been consistent. First, define flawlessness, then position the natural human body as the before picture. Your unaltered face becomes the problem. Your natural aging becomes the problem. Your skin in its resting state becomes the problem. The problem is invented first. The product is the solution to the problem that was just invented. The second step is to time the delivery. This is the part that is harder to dismiss as coincidence. Research commissioned by marketing firms has specifically identified the moments when people feel most insecure about their appearance, Monday mornings, early in the day, and used that data to optimize when ads are served. Your most vulnerable moment was mapped, and then someone decided to meet you there with a product designed to feel like the answer to a feeling they had a financial interest in maintaining. The third step is to use the comparison loop. Social media did not create the comparison mechanism. It industrialized it. What used to require a magazine on a monthly schedule now runs continuously, in your pocket, calibrated to your specific pattern of engagement. showing you the version of beauty most likely to activate your particular insecurity. The algorithm does not care about your self-esteem. It cares about your attention. And it has learned, very precisely, that insecurity holds attention longer than contentment does. So the comparison loop you have been trying to interrupt is not a personal weakness, it is a product feature. You have been trying to opt out of a system that was designed specifically to prevent you from opting out. That is very different from failing at self-love. That is responding normally to a mechanism that is enormously sophisticated and very well funded. It makes complete sense that you feel this. This is where things get important and personal. Here is where the conversation usually stops. Beauty standards are manufactured. The industry profits from insecurity. And then the person watching, maybe you, thinks, I knew that. I have known that for a while, and I still don't like what I see in the mirror. So what does any of this actually change? And that is the right question. Because systemic understanding does not automatically dissolve personal pain. Knowing the machine exists does not immediately free you from what the machine did to you. What it does, and this is not a small thing, is change the verdict. There are things you did not do because of a feeling that was manufactured for profit. Photos you deleted. Opportunities you did not apply for because you did not feel like enough. Rooms you left earlier than you wanted to. Sentences you swallowed. Moments you moved through at a remove from yourself. Because some part of you was busy managing the gap between what you looked like and what the machine said you should. That is a real cost. And it deserves to be called what it is. Not a character flaw, not vanity, not weakness, but the specific, measurable price of being targeted by a system that ran on your self-doubt and got paid every time it worked. The feeling was real. The exhaustion was real. The grief of the moments that were quietly surrendered, that is real too. What was not real was the verdict the feeling carried. The conclusion that something was constitutionally wrong with you, that you were the problem. That part, the verdict, was not discovered. It was installed. And a feeling that was installed by a system with a financial interest in your inadequacy is not evidence about your worth. It is evidence about the system. You have been paying for this with things that mattered. And that is not nothing. That is the honest accounting of what this cost. And it is the thing that makes what comes next worth doing. If this video opens something specific, if what you're sitting with right now is not just the system, but the part of the system that is still running inside you, there is a resource in the description built for exactly that next step. It's called Body and Worth, and it's designed to help you begin separating your sense of value from the appearance-based verdict that the industry spent decades trying to install. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, the objection that is probably present somewhere in this, knowing this doesn't make me feel better. And that is true. Media literacy, understanding the mechanism, does not automatically dissolve the reflex it created. You can know precisely how a trigger works and still be triggered. So this is not going to end with now that you know you're free. That would be dishonest. What ends differently is something smaller and more durable than that. Here is what the research on this actually shows. When people develop what researchers call a critical media literacy, not just awareness that images are altered, but an active, embodied habit of questioning the source of a feeling, the automatic power of the comparison loop begins to weaken. Not disappear, weaken. The half second between exposure and internalization gets a little longer. And in that half second, something becomes possible that wasn't possible before. The one thing that changes how you move through the next 24 hours is not a practice or a challenge or a reframe. It is a question. When the feeling arrives, the one in the mirror, the one triggered by the scroll, the one that surfaces in the dressing room or the group photo, before you treat it as information about your worth, ask, where did this standard come from? Who benefits from my believing I fall short of it? What is this feeling actually about? Not to dismiss the feeling, not to perform immunity, but to insert the smallest possible gap between the trigger and the verdict. Because a verdict that requires a gap to examine is a verdict that can be revised. The version of you that walked into this video was carrying a feeling, as though it were a verdict about something permanent. The version of you that finishes it knows that the feeling had an author. And an author with a profit motive is a very different kind of authority than the one you have been granting it. That is not everything. But it is not nothing either. And it is the beginning of something real. For anyone who wants to take the internal work further, Body and Worth in the description is the next step, built specifically for uncoupling self-value from appearance in a way that goes deeper than awareness alone. The link is in the description and pinned below. What was the first moment you started to suspect that the standard you were measuring yourself against wasn't actually yours? There are things the industry needed you to believe in order for its model to work. It needed you to believe the standard was neutral, that it emerged from some objective truth about beauty rather than from a boardroom decision about margin. It needed you to believe that your failure to meet it was personal, a deficit in you, not a feature of the system. And it needed you to keep that belief private, to carry the inadequacy quietly, to treat the gap between yourself and the image as something to be ashamed of rather than something to be angry about. The grief of what that cost you is real. The photo's not taken, the room's not fully inhabited, the version of yourself you kept at arm's length because the system told you, repeatedly and expensively, that you were not quite right. That is a real loss. And it deserves to be grieved, not minimized. But the fact that you watched this video means part of you has already been doing something the industry did not design for. Part of you kept asking questions, kept looking for the thing underneath the thing, kept refusing to accept the verdict as final. That part was right to bring you here. And it is the same part that will keep moving forward. Not toward a body that finally meets the standard, but toward a self that has stopped outsourcing its worth to a system that was never in the business of giving it back. You were not born with this feeling. It was taught to you by a system that profited from the teaching. And what is taught can be questioned. What is installed can be examined. What was put there by something outside you does not have to stay as though it came from within. The person you are becoming is not someone without insecurity. They are someone who knows where the insecurity came from, and who no longer mistakes its voice for the truth about their worth. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, exactly what this work looks like.